The routes of transmission. When an infectious agent, such as bacteria, virus, parasite, or fungus, travels from a reservoir to its susceptible host, it is transmitted in a number of ways. These ways are called routes of transmission, and there are two kinds. The first is known as direct transmission, where the transmission comes directly from the reservoir to the susceptible host. In other words, the physical transfer of the microorganism is the result of direct physical contact between an infected person and a susceptible person. The second route of transmission is indirect. This occurs when a susceptible person is infected as a result of coming into contact with a contaminated surface or object, or to a vector such as a mosquito or a tick or a rodent. Let's review the following scenarios where infected microorganisms are transmitted via both direct and indirect routes of transmission. Direct transmission. Scenario 1. The most common way of transmitting an infected pathogen is when an infected person directly touches and contaminates another person. Think of shaking hands, kissing, or sexual activity. Scenario 2. Your infected friend directly sneezing or coughing in your face directly increase your chances of developing an infection. The transmission is made in the form of respiratory droplets, which can be projected from your infected friend through the air and deposited directly onto your mouth or nose. Indirect transmission. Scenario 1. Sure, you love her, but don't confuse affection with infection. With all the love that you have for your better half, if you are infected, you can unknowingly use her to transmit the infected pathogen to another person, who in turn will develop an infection. This is how the pathogen is transmitted indirectly from you to a third person. When touching her hand, the organism is transmitted to her without affecting or infecting her. However, when she comes in direct contact with another person who is susceptible to the infection, she physically transfers the same infected organism to that person, who then becomes infected from that organism. Scenario 2. In another case, the transmission does infect her, and the same infected organism is then transferred to another person, who in turn develops an infection. Scenario 3. Every day, a great number of people with infected pathogens contaminate objects and surfaces, such as restroom door handles. You may be at risk for contamination and infection should you come into contact with this object. Airborne spread. Do you remember the last time you went out with your best friend, having a great time and feeling sick the next day? Well, maybe it was because of the airborne spread. Your infected friend could have propelled droplet-sized body fluids containing infected microorganisms a short distance onto environmental surfaces, such as a table, a chair, or a glass that you happen to touch. Infective agents can remain suspended in the air for a long period of time with the ability to cause infection. Vehicle-borne. It's not only the raw chicken that you prepare, but many foods can also be infected by any number of infectious pathogens. When you prepare food with a knife on a cutting board or any other surface, you need to clean and disinfect both the cutting board and the surface as well as the knife, because cross-contamination may occur even on vegetables. A vehicle-borne transmission occurs when an inanimate object or material called a fomite becomes contaminated with the infectious agent. In this case, the raw chicken was the cause. Vector-borne. Being bitten by an infected mosquito is a good example of a vector-borne transmission that can happen when you least expect it. Depending on one's geographical region, where mosquito-borne diseases are endemic, one could be susceptible to such illnesses as malaria, dengue, West Nile virus, and Zika fever. A vector-borne transmission occurs when a living creature transmits an infectious agent to a human.